I'm here in Normandy, France at the D-Day Cemetery and Visitor Center. I've got a few thoughts, including an important thing to know about this place. I think a lot of visitors here miss it when they come here, so stay tuned.
If you're visiting Normandy, France, and particularly if you're an American, you probably want to visit this place. This is the Normandy American Cemetery. Located about 3 hours drive northwest of Paris, this place is on a beautiful bluff overlooking the English Channel. Of course, this is not some random location for a cemetery. Some of the fiercest fighting in the European theater of World War II occurred right here on June 6, 1944. As the American forces landed on Omaha Beach, they faced fierce resistance from German fighters for several hours. Thousands of American soldiers lost their lives that day and in the weeks ahead. Today, there's over 9,300 soldiers buried here in the Normandy American Cemetery. To many Americans, and I include myself in this group, D-Day and the battle on June 6, 1944 represents some of America's finest hours as we liberated France from Nazi Germany. Walking around the cemetery, you feel a sense of patriotism and also some sadness and a sense that you're walking on sacred ground. Before I dive deeper into my visit here, I do want to talk a little bit about the logistics, getting to this place, and a few things that may be helpful for those who are planning a trip. And a little bit later on in this video, I am going to tell you about a common mistake that people make, including myself the first time I came here. It has to do with the way this place is laid out and some lack of signage. First thing to know, you should plan on driving here. Yes, there are a lot of trains in Europe, but none that come up here to the American Cemetery in Normandy. It's just much easier to rent a car, or maybe you're part of a tour group that's going to take a bus up here. But renting a car is easy in France. You will have to contend with a little bit of traffic in Paris, but once you get beyond that, there are a few tolls, but it's easy to drive up to Normandy. If you're coming from Paris, you can do this in one day, but it's a long day. You're going to want to get up early. It's about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive each direction, depending upon traffic and where you're staying in Paris. A better option might be to stay up in Normandy for a couple of days. You have some great towns like Le Havre and Caen that have good accommodations. You also have places to see such as Mont Saint-Michel, which is located about 90 minutes the other direction. So you can't do that in the same day, but definitely worth your while to see. Here's an aerial view a couple of miles away as you approach Omaha Beach and the cemetery. As you can see, this is a very rural part of France. A lot of farmland, a lot of hedgerows. If you're not the one driving or paying attention to the navigation system, you probably won't even realize you're getting close here. You can't really see anything as you approach, but eventually you arrive. There's a big parking lot, and most people get out here and then make their way to the visitor center. When I think of visitor center, I usually think of a place that I walk in for 10 minutes, grab a brochure, maybe look at a display. This is not really a visitor center. It's much more of a museum. You can spend easily an hour in this place. When you walk through here, it's a lot bigger than it seems from the outside. You go downstairs and there are all sorts of artifacts, displays, exhibits, images, and stories that you can browse through. There's a theater. You can walk in, sit down, and watch a movie. It's like 10 or 15 minutes long, but have your Kleenex ready because it's a tearjerker. As you exit the visitor center, you immediately head left, and you're right on the crest of the hill. You follow a pathway right along the bluff here, overlooking the English Channel down to Omaha Beach. And after a couple of 100 yards, you eventually reach the cemetery. And your natural tendency is just to kind of flow right out, walk right out into the cemetery. I think it's fascinating to look closely at the grave markers. Most of them are crosses. You do see a Star of David every now and then. Each marker has the name of the soldier, the date that they died, and also their home state. Now, it's just my observation, but you see a lot of soldiers that came from New York, from Pennsylvania, from Ohio, kind of the old Rust Belt, whereas you don't see nearly as many from the western states. Occasionally California, occasionally Texas, but you don't see nearly as many from Florida, from the states out west, the Nevadas, Arizonas, Utahs. To me, kind of an interesting reminder that the demographics and population of the United States is a bit different now than it was 80 years ago. There's been a lot of westward and southward migration. As you walk around, there's a lot more than just the grave markings to see here at the cemetery. There's a reflecting pond, a colonnade, some statues. There's a really cool wall that shows the detailed operations happening on the western front. You also have a chapel with a beautiful mosaic that you can look up and observe. This entire place is incredibly well maintained and manicured, really one of the most impressive cemeteries you're ever going to see. Let me go back to the aerial view and tell you about the mistake that I made on my first visit here, and I'm not the only one. When you arrive here at the parking lot, you make your way to the visitor center. You're going to be there for about an hour. After you get out, you're not going to go back to the parking lot. You're going to follow the path, and it heads only to the left. Now, after a few hundred yards, that pathway flows out to the cemetery. You see the grave markings, you go to the chapel. Then you turn around and you make your way back to the colonnade. Now, by this time, most visitors have been here a couple of hours, and you end up right back at the parking lot. And so you naturally think, oh, this is the end. But it would be a big mistake to get in your car and drive away. What you want to do is head to the other side of the visitor center and find the path shown here by this blue arrow. Now, there's not a lot of great signage, but that path is going to lead you down to the Big Red One Monument. This is a monument honoring the 1st Infantry Division, which is the division that landed right here at Omaha Beach. Once you've seen that monument, keep heading down towards the beach and you will get to another monument for the 5th Engineer Special Brigade. This is also a good place to stop and just admire the view. From here, just follow the pathway down towards the beach. Soon you're going to arrive at some German bunkers that have been pretty well preserved. Now, you do need to watch your step as you come down here. There's no paved pathway. These are clearly not managed by the same organization that manages the cemetery and the visitor center. Now, this is not the only bunker in the area. In fact, the beach is several miles long, and there are a number of different bunkers that you can see and explore. But this one, pretty well preserved, and I like the view. You come out here and you see the beach just as the German soldiers would have seen as the Allies were landing. Now, eventually you'll make your way down to the beach. There is a dirt trail. It's not a paved path, but a dirt trail. You come down here, you'll notice a rock that has a plaque on it. This plaque recognizes the combat medics of the 1st Infantry Division, and it has a number of names on it and designates which ones lost their lives. One thing to be aware is the tide can really change here on Omaha Beach. This clip I'm showing now I took in the month of November during a previous visit. As you can see, the tide is much further out. You can walk all the way down on the beach, look right at the names on that plaque. Having been to this place a number of times, I really like the cemetery. The visitor center is especially well done, but coming down here onto the beach is something special to look out and see exactly what the soldiers saw on June 6th of 1944. Looking up on that bluff, I can only imagine what they would have felt, and I appreciate their sacrifice even that much more. So if you're planning to come here, don't make the mistake that I made years ago on my first visit by leaving when I was done with the cemetery. You want to take the time and walk down to the beach, enjoy the memorials, see the bunkers. You'll have a great experience.